Welcome to the Buds and Reality Show, the number one Liberty podcast in Detroit. I am Sean Collins, the guy with a lot to say, and we have Mr. Stephen McNamara in the house. Brother, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Man, I'm doing good, and I'm glad you got to come back on short notice, because there's some things going on over there that we need to talk about because the UK is on fire. And I don't mean that in a good way. I mean that literally. The UK is burning right now. What the hell is going on over there, man?
Well, as you know, I'm not legally allowed to say anything because anything anyone finds offensive is deemed a criminal offence now and punishable by up to 7 years in jail. So, but the big thing is that the Americans yourselves are being targeted by our government.
So what, man? If we're going to start there, we might as well start there because I think it's actually hilarious.
It is hilarious. It is hilarious. And there's a lot of ridicule happening. But it basically started a few days ago with London Metropolitan Police Commissioner. Oh, such a fancy title. Sir Mark Rowley decided that it was going to warn the Americans and say that if they started posting stuff on social media that might be, racial hatred or, try to stir up, the ongoing battles in the cities here in the UK, it was going to try and extradite Americans.
You know what? When I saw that on X, right? Because so we knew what was going on over there. X is a great source of news, actually. It's the number one place to get news now on any app. It's literally you get like the breaking news immediately before it even hits the TV. There's so many different news outlets you can follow on there to kind of get some good information and whatever. But the fact
it's not just that. It's not just that. It's actually X.com is making the news. It's not just reporting the news where you can find it. It's actually making the news headlines constantly on a daily basis. Somebody has said something on X and we are now reporting it 24 hours later. It's fantastic. It's right on the button, live action. We are getting pictures and videos of crimes and incidents before the police have even been called. It's fantastic. It's a brilliant source of information. You're getting the raw data and being able to make judgments and decisions yourself.
Which has been a godsend, and when it comes to what's going on in the UK, it's not a secret. Like, London is burning and England is burning. It's on fire right now, and people are pissed off. Now, before we get into all that, you brought up the extradition thing. Now, the UK government had threatened to extradite US citizens for talking shit to them on X accounts, right? And here we are in America, the most armed country in the world. I mean, we are the largest standing militia in the world. This is why most countries don't come here and play games, because they know better. Mm-hmm. And you have the UK government saying, hey, we're going to come get you if you keep coming up on our social media threads and talking shit to us. Because, the people are burning the cities down in England right now because they're upset with their government. Mm. They are upset with the outcome of the election. The socialists clean house in the UK. The socialists swept there.
And
they won.
There's some interesting stats from that election that we can go into shortly. But yeah, it did look like a landslide for Labour on the face of things. The openly socialist government. They've all been socialist, but Labour's openly socialist. They admit it.
They're like the Democrats of England, the UK, right?
Yeah.
The Labour Party.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's not our police and our governments that are going to be coming after the Americans, right? They'll do exactly as they've done with an Australian citizen back in December. They sought to extradite someone for posting stuff on Facebook, and they approached the Australian government, and it was the Australian government that went to the person's house and arrested them. Now, that's an ongoing story, and I don't have all the details yet, It'll probably go through some sort of appeal process. So I don't know if the person's out on bail or whether he's still in remand in a cell somewhere in a prison. But that's exactly what you guys need to be worried about. It's not our government that's going to come and get you. It's your own government, your own police are going to come with arrest warrants at the request of the UK government. That's what will happen. That's what you've got to be worried about.
I mean, that's what, in Australia, it's a little different because Australia is still technically an English territory. Australia isn't necessarily its own country. It's still an English territory,
It's what do they call it? Not a republican. So sovereign state. I'll get monarchy.
They're kind of, it's kind of like Puerto Rico in the United States. Like Puerto Rico isn't part of the United States, but the United States helps them. They're pretty much a United States state without being a state, right? Yeah. Like they get money from us, they get help from us, stuff like that. Now,
aliens can stand on their own 2 feet, absolutely fine. They don't need to be part of the UK or part of the monarchy or anything. Well, they're not part of the UK, but they don't need to be part of the monarchy. They just are, or former ex-convicts that the English sent away many years ago.
Now, let me ask you this: people are rioting in the streets right now in England. Is it because they believe that the election was stolen?
Not the election.
Or that it was rigged. Like why is this happening? I guess is what I'm getting at. Like this is why I wanted to have you on so much again, because like you're a real person, you're there, you see it with your own eyes. We get a lot of reports from news, but I mean that comes from a long ways away and you don't know how true it is.
Yeah. So
like, in your opinion, in your eyes, why are people so upset and burning down the cities? I have my own assumptions, but like I'd love to hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we have to be specifically careful, so as not to incite more violence or riots. But basically, people have been upset for a while, and it has been brewing, and we've watched, extremist left-wing groups and religious groups and things get away constantly with violence, with protests, those mostly peaceful protests that we hear about where shopkeepers just watch for your what was it, the glitter stuff the last time, confetti.
You talking about 2020 when BLM was burning down the cities in the United States?
Yeah,
mostly peaceful protests.
Yeah, and the same thing was happening here, just on a much smaller scale. And then for the last couple of years, we've been dealing with this. Some of us would actually refer to them as a terror group. They're beyond a joke. But the Just Stop Oil protesters, they've been blockading roads. They've been damaging property. Actual valuable artwork in museums they have been trying to damage and other things. So it's and they've been pissing people off and not even been getting arrested when people usually those people died in ambulances in the roadblocks. There's real harm done. And we've had angry motorists being arrested for shouting at the protesters to move. And the police have showed up and they've been protecting the protesters who are doing all this damage rather than arresting them and moving them on. And there was eventually enough of a public backlash that the police felt pressured into doing something, and they made a couple of token gestures, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And then, a few weeks back, some of the ringleaders, a few of the ringleaders were imprisoned for a number of years, but only because of the severity of the public pressure. And it should never have gotten to that stage. And we're seeing religious groups, we're seeing young men openly brandishing large knives and other swords and weapons in the streets. Clinging on, there's a video that was viral of this young man clinging onto the back of a bus, brandishing a machete in a busy London street. That where's the police who are meant to be dealing with this? They're too busy chasing down people who's posting comments on Twitter.
So wait a minute, let me interrupt you real quick. So when it was their side protesting the streets, it was okay, and they kind of just let them do their thing. But now the way it's portrayed to us Americans here, here in the States, I'm in Detroit, Michigan. We're seeing that it's now the far right extremists that have taken to the streets and are burning down buildings and rioting and stuff like that. And so it's okay if they do it, but now that the other side is pissed off and they're doing it, now they're literally getting arrested for social, not only like rioting in the streets or whatever, but they're getting brought in for social media posts that the UK, which is like, if there's no free speech, there is no speech. If there's no rights, there's, and I know you guys are a little bit different over there. You don't have a constitution like we do in the United States, but at the end of the day, like as a human being and as somebody who bleeds red, no matter what, what side of the fence you come on or what nationality you are, you're born with inherent rights that come from God, from the Almighty up above. And that one of them is your right to speech. One of them is your right to defend yourself. One is the right to protect, your property, your family, as any way you deem fit. You're allowed to, live free and prosper. That's part of the whole thing. That's part of being a human being. You shouldn't have a constitution on paper to say that's okay. But now we're seeing it in real time where like they let the left get away with it, or the Labor Party, as you guys would call it, they're letting them get away with the same things that the people, quote unquote, these far right extremists are doing in the streets, except they've one-upped it and now they're arresting people for just talking shit on Facebook or X or, Instagram, whatever it may be. That's insane. That's crazy.
It's really beyond a joke. It really is. And things are getting pretty extreme. But how it's being portrayed here by the kind of ordinary person in the street who's maybe not a Labour voter, or who maybe lent them the vote and now regretting it, only 4 weeks in to this new government. We've got another 5 years to go. We're only 4 or 5 weeks in, and the whole place is being destroyed. People are calling the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, they're using the term two-tier Keir. So it's basically because he's basically allowing the policing to be in two different levels, two tiers. So you've got people on the left getting away with murder. That literal murder. You hold up an ambulance and someone dies in it. I don't know what else to call you other than a murderer.
Right.
And they weren't even charged with that. You get people on the right who's saying, hey, look, I don't think this is right. I'm going to go to a protest and argue about it. And they're getting arrested for inciting riots and put in jail for years. 1.5, 2 years, 3 years. And it's just, why? Why can't we just have, if we're going to have a police force run by a government, it has to be on equal sides. We can't have it on this different level depending on your political opinion. That's what's making people angry. But it's not it's like folk like yourself, myself, right? We're just working men. We've got our wives or families or that. We've got homes to look after. We've got jobs to look after, to go to, and clients to look after. We're not the ones out rioting or inciting stuff, but we're the ones saying, hey, something's not right. It has to be done. But as always, you go to the more extreme end of people's viewpoints, and they're the ones getting extra angry, and they're the ones going out into the streets, and all it takes is the littlest thing, and then you get a riot. And it's been quite sad to see in England, and other places round about, the cities getting destroyed, basically, entire places, becoming just no-go zones because the littlest bit of flare up. But what we're also seeing is the media taking part in it. So the mainstream media, what is not, those people without being on X or some other, Telegram or other sort of social media platform, are not seeing the raw information coming through. They're getting the watered down version and the socialized version. So what they're seeing on their TV screens is violent protests by white people primarily, who, and they're taking small clips, not necessarily out of context, but certainly, dubious. It might have been, a couple of hundred people there, and a handful of them have started a little quarrel in a corner somewhere, and it's being portrayed as thousands, wandering through the streets, destroying everything, and try to attack police officers and stuff. I mean, the first couple of nights, there was pretty hardcore rioting going on, that we even seen through ourselves. And something like 37 police officers were injured by rioters.
Wow.
So, that was a big flare up at the start when that way, if somebody gets angry and they have this massive flare up, and then they'll just stomp, run about, and vent after that. I think that's what's happened. There's been this big angry flare up. The straw that broke the camel's back. This big angry flare up saying, "Hey, look, we're not happy with this. There's too much going on, and we want an end brought to it. We want fair and honest justice. We don't want, this two-tiered system that appears to be coming, even if it's not true, right? Even if there genuinely isn't any two-tiered policing being done through political motive. I find that hard to believe. But even if there isn't genuinely, it certainly doesn't come across that way, and they do not help themselves. They really don't. And that's what's making people angry. But of course, you get the counter protests who are protesting about the protesting and wanting anyone who disagrees with them completely locked up. And it's just so easy to appease them because they're the people that actually vote for you. So if you're wanting re-elected, you're going to appease to the left rather than the right, because you've already lost the right voters. There's no point. But like me, try to think of a good analogy here. I'm not really big into football, but it'd be me, like, and people know I'm not into football, but it'd be me going into a pub and saying, "Hey guys, I really think this is a good idea. Why don't you come with me?" And they'll be like, "Nah, you don't support your team. Bugger off." So I'm going to get more response to an idea going down a political avenue because I'm more involved in politics than I'm in sport. And it's the same. We've got a left-wing Labour government, socialist government, and they're appeasing to the socialists because that's who they want to keep voting for them.
Now, let me ask you something, because we all know, as like, freedom fighters, people who are liberty minded, and it doesn't matter whether it's the right side or the left side, the state as a whole is a blood sucking parasite who's out to bleed you dry of your health, your wealth, your property, and your rights. That is what the state does on any front, whether you are a labor person, a right wing, left wing, whatever. The state wants that from you. They want to bleed you dry of everything, so you're compliant and reliant on them.
Yeah, that's how they. It's it's like breeding your own farm animals. That's what it is. You're breeding your own voters.
But we've been pushed to a point now, and it's not just it's not, and I say we because this is a global situation now. Like, look what's happening in Venezuela. Same thing is happening in Venezuela. They're burning Venezuela down because the socialists had taken over, probably on a dishonest election, which we can get into elections on a whole different podcast, because I honestly think every election is dishonest. They're all rigged, in my opinion. That's, opinions are like assholes. We all have one. They all stink. But, the fact of the matter is the people have had enough. We have had enough. And so now when people are taking to the streets and they're angry and they're showing their anger out in the streets, I used to be very much against that, because you really shouldn't be burning down businesses that didn't do you any harm and stuff like that. But like at a certain point, you need to stand up for yourself, but you don't go burn down businesses. Like, I love what Paris did. When Paris was rioting and stuff like that, they burned down the BlackRock building. And I was like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, how can you even be mad that they burned down the Central Bank? Like, okay, dude, like, man, you probably could have had a better way of doing things or whatever, but like, they burned down the BlackRock building. I'll clap for that, honestly, seriously, because the central bankers are the reason for all of this anyways. They're the ones pulling the strings for all the policies and shit like that.
Of course they are.
Like, so, when it comes to the UK, like, we have the Federal Reserve here in the United States. That's our central bank. Is the UK the IMF World Bank, or they have their own thing?
Yeah, no, they're part of it as well. It's just I don't know anyone who isn't. So it's, I mean, they were part of when the UK was part of the European Union. There was a lot of pressure to join and use the euro as opposed to the pound, and that just wasn't a vote winner here. And ultimately, the referendum chose to secede from the EU and become an independent group of nations again. So, although the UK is made up of these countries, the UK itself is now independent from Europe, or supposed to be, but all the laws are so interlinked. It's actually difficult.
So you're saying the UK is no longer a part of the EU?
Yeah, that's right. That was, what, 2019, something like that, yeah.
Wow, I did not realize that at all. There's actually a couple people I follow from the EU that I actually love so much. They're my fellow Irish people, Mick Wallace and Claire Daly. They've been wonderful voices of liberty in the EU. Unfortunately, a lot of their ideas and their stuff gets shot down because they're speaking out against what the EU out. But like, they've been great. They've been a great follow through this, this nonsense. I started following them during the COVID era because they were very vocal about, that. And especially like, when the Nord Stream pipeline was blown up and Mick Wallace and Claire Daly were like, hey man, the story they're giving is not true. It was actually the United States, and I believe it was the US for sure. And I believe they had Finland that helped them blow up Nord Stream. And they tried to blame it all on Russia. I'm like, why the hell would Russia blow up their own pipeline? You know what I mean? Like that was their money. That was their money funneler. Like they wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But it's sad to see that, things have come to this. Like nobody ever wants to see rioting in the streets. Nobody wants that. But we know that people have been pushed to the point to where they know there's no choice anymore. How are you supposed to get heard? You're obviously not getting heard at the voting booths.
Mhm.
And I'm American. I can say this. I'm not speaking for you. I don't want them to come after you for any ways. By the way, UK government, if you want to come after me, we have a term in Ireland we like to say, Pog Mahone, come on, kiss my ass. You're not Pog Mahone. Come get it, dude. You're not coming to take us anywhere. I'm telling you that right now. UK government, I'm telling you that right now. You're not going to extradite US citizens. It's not going to happen. Our government's not going to comply, and neither are the police. So get the idea out of your head right now. I will talk about whatever I want to on my podcast, and I will talk about whatever I want to on social media. You guys can't do anything to me.
Yes, and likewise, if any of my friends in England are watching this, if they need some help with welding, I'm not a good welder, but I'll encourage you.
You need to make friends who are welders. You need to make friends with CNC machines, lathes, stuff like that. Maybe some 3D printers. I don't know if you guys get.
I'm great at demolishing stuff. Sometimes unintentional.
But no, I think the only fix to what's happening over there is the same thing that's only going to fix here in America, and that's liberty. Liberty's the only way out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to get out of this otherwise. It's absolutely insane to believe that, we are going to be, holding hands and singing Kumbaya while playing for a political team who has no intentions of helping you. Like I said, the state is a blood-sucking parasite. I don't care if it's your left-wing or your right-wing people. It's just their form of fascism against the other side. How about we just let everybody be free and leave everybody the fuck alone? That's kind of the ideal situation here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just getting beyond the joke now. I mean, when I first heard about the riots, I wasn't surprised as such, but I thought, oh yeah, here we go, and then it just kind of continued. One night led into a second night, into a third night, and things like that. And I remember joking about the police. I says, look, if you don't want to get yourselves hurt, maybe you should only come out and patrol during the mornings when everyone's away in their bed.
That's right.
I mean, that was how Jordan Peterson, if you remember Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, he was always getting people protesting at his events and speaking events and things. That's how he dealt with it. He went and organised his speaking events at college campuses and universities in the morning, and the people who were always arguing and protesting against him were still in their bed sleeping because they were up all night, and none of them could be bothered getting up to protest at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Right, because that's, a lot of these people that are doing this shit, let's be real, like a lot of these people that are out in the streets and, acting a fool and burning down whatever, most of them don't have jobs, or they're collecting a state check, or they're, some of them are even being paid to do it. Like that's a thing too. Like, political organizations will pay monies for people to go burn down cities. They do it all the time. George Soros does it here in the United States. He was doing it in 2020. Busloads of people were getting dropped off. You guys can call me a conspiracy theorist or not. George Soros was having busloads of people dropped off in cities to riot. He was paying them to do it. Something like $15 an hour. Hey, knock yourselves out.
And we'll bus you away into another city and you'll never be heard of or seen again.
Yep.
Aye.
But
I could quite believe it.
I am sorry that that is happening over there. We saw this in 2020 here in the States, where cities were on fire, because the people are sick of it, and so
Oh,
that side was sick of it. Now the other side's sick of it. I'm afraid in this, I'm not inciting anything. I'm just saying this as a analyst, as a journalist at this point. I think here in the United States, no matter whether it's Trump who wins or whether it's Kamala Harris who wins, there's going to be serious violence in the cities. It doesn't matter. No matter which side wins, there's going to be people who are very upset and they are going to burn America to the ground. It's going to happen 100%. I won't be a part of that. I will be on this podcast talking about it, but I will not be burning down anything.
They're probably just jealous because England's getting all the attention at the moment.
Well, so what's the next best move, do you think, for the people of the UK? Because obviously, the state is not on their side. They're arresting them for protesting. Even if they're just protesting, they're arresting them. And they're arresting them for voicing their opinions on social media. So, where do you go from here? Because what's going to happen is, what I'm afraid of is that, the people are going to end up being scared and not doing anything and just cowering down and taking whatever the government gives. And that is not a place you want to be in, ladies and gentlemen.
No, you don't.
I promise you
that. The British Isles have had this weird history over the last, hundreds of years where they've never had an actual civil war other than the wars between Scotland and England, and even more recently the what they referred to as the Troubles in Ireland. It wasn't really, England itself has never had a civil war within itself in hundreds of years. And the reason is that as soon as violence like this starts, the government usually concedes something. And at the moment, we're not seeing what that concession is. But that's Keir Starmer, the current Prime Minister, needs to think long and hard. There's actually a petition at the moment. I mean, it must be the quickest petition I have ever seen, going about requesting a Prime Minister to resign after only, a handful of weeks in the job of a newly elected government. To not Theresa May, who was it? Liz Truss, who was Prime Minister for a handful of weeks. She won her election within her party and got made Prime Minister, and then quickly resigned after some internal backstabbing. But this is the first time I have certainly seen a newly elected Prime Minister by the public being asked to resign so quickly. And it's had just short of, as we speak at the moment, it was sitting just below 150,000 signatures.
Wow.
Which is quite a lot. I mean, considering the population and how many people are actually active in politics, to get 150,000, 100,000 gets a debate organised in Parliament, and 150, could see an actual vote. So not just a debate, but it's followed by a vote by the MPs sitting in Parliament. So this is, it's quite a seismic type of petition. Usually, you always get these silly wee petitions, and they go nowhere. Even the ones that do reach 100,000 votes, it'll get a mention at some sort of late night meeting room with a handful of MPs sitting in the back. But when it's called to vote, then that's during normal business hours. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I don't think there's much that the MPs can really vote on, because the petition is for Keir Starmer to resign himself. So the MPs are all Labour MPs anyway, bar 100 odd. So just short of 500 MPs are all Labour. Unless Keir Starmer does actually resign, he's going nowhere, because his MPs will just re-vote him in. They'll vote to continue to keep him as Prime Minister. I don't know where or what the Labour government can do to settle this violence, because there's nothing they've got to offer.
Now, it hypothetically, and I guess you got to be careful when answering this question, or you don't have to answer it at all, but I'm just kind of curious. Hypothetically, there is an uprising in the UK. Nobody's armed. Nobody has guns.
There's guns about.
But I mean, like, it's not a lot. You guys like
that will be the first thing if there's complete civil breakdown. Complete breakdown where there's no police, there's no military, they've all just disbanded, or they're in their little groups or whatever. There are weapons, and food sources and weapons are going to be the first things. It's actually interesting. There's some studies and things done about the breakdown of society and what is the first thing that people will do. And one of the advice given is don't let on to your neighbours what you actually have. So this, keeping up with the Joneses Act is actually bad for you, because your house will, if you've got a nice little house, a nice little garden, and you're flashing the cash on a fancy car every 3 years and stuff like that, your house is going to be the first one targeted in a complete societal breakdown by your neighbours. And if you openly admit to being a prepper, or being more organised, and things like that, then you will become a target. So you have to think of fortifying your home and protecting yourself. And if that means stockpiling some weapons somewhere, even if it's not guns, because guns are illegal and there's, slim chance of a complete societal breakdown happening, there are other weapons that are legal to own and store in your home, for the time being. I think the Scottish government were talking about licensing crossbows next.
Licensing what?
Crossbows and arrows.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So
you can't hunt. Like they're taking away hunting tools. Great.
Yes, I know. And it'll be knives after that. They've already outlawed large swords and things like that, and scary looking knives. But that's what will be next. There's age limits on the purchase of cutlery. So you go into the shop to buy some teaspoons, you've got to be over the age of 18, because teaspoons could be dangerous weapons.
Holy shit, man. So it's a complete dystopia there. Like it is a dystopia.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course. And it's frightening. It is frightening. So it's just it's strange indeed.
It's frightening. It's sad. It is a travesty. But I'm pulling for you guys over there. Like whatever it may be, it may be. You know what I mean? Like if people need to do what they need to do to get their point across at this point, then so be it. However, they need to do it. I know there's going to be casualties if that's the way it's got to go. But liberty and freedom are worth fighting for. We have a term here in America, live free or die.
Yeah.
Live free or die. Like that is the motto here. But we're losing that mindset. Honestly, like America is going to be the UK. It's happening. The writing's on the wall. It's happening, and especially if Kamala Harris gets elected, not to say that I'm a big Trump or anything. I don't want anybody to win. I'm not voting. But you know what I'm saying? Like, she's going to be the one who's going to take away the assault weapons, quote unquote. There's no such thing as an assault weapon, by the way, but they call them these things. She said within the first 100 days, assault weapons are going away. Good luck, lady. That's all I'm going to say. Nobody's taking your guns. Guns aren't going anywhere. Sorry, not sorry. But, but like at a certain point, people need to rise up. America did not become America, by bowing down to government. As a matter of fact, people died over 2% tax about tea. They're going to tax tea 2%. And the people here said, no, the fuck you're not. As a matter of fact, we're going to overthrow your bitch asses and we're going to take this country. And that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they did. Does England need to see another 1776? Well, you can't say it, but I will. Maybe so. Yeah. Maybe so, because enough is enough. You're not going to oppress people. You're not going to steal their money, their property, their rights as a human being. You're not going to keep doing that and expect no pushback. This is what I'm talking about. Is they keep pushing, they keep pushing, they keep pushing, they keep taking away a little more liberty, a little more rights, a little more of this, a little more of that. Next thing you know, you have nothing, you have no money. They've taxed you into complete slavery. No. Mm-hmm. So God bless the people in the UK who are doing what they're doing right now. God bless the people in Venezuela who are doing what they're doing right now. As a matter of fact, the Venezuelan, the police and the military there have actually got on the side of the people and kind of let them do their thing and don't fuck with them. And they bring them food and water and shit. Like, we need to see that everywhere. Like, at a certain point, like, we're only human beings. We're only going to be pushed to the brink so long before we push back. And when you're stealing all of our fucking money, you're taking away all of our fucking rights, especially when it comes to self-defense. We haven't been completely disarmed yet here in the United States. But, man, all these red flag laws, it's only a matter of time here, that to where, like, we're going to be disarmed. Or we're going to be stuck with a 6-shooter. You know what I mean? Something like that. Whatever. So
it's easy enough to wander down the kind of extreme end of the path. What's happening right now is this we're still in this sort of cancel culture. So at the moment, our first line of defense is protecting ourselves and protecting our jobs. There's a lot of people. I mean, even just today again, and it's a near daily basis, as you've seen yourself. People call me all sorts of things online on a daily basis. We could do an entire podcast about that.
Me too. I understand completely.
On a daily basis, it is people, trying to find out, like a stalker type, trying to find out who I work for, where I work, because fine well, they're going to want to cancel me. And we've seen it as soon as I was publicly named as going to be standing as a candidate for Reform. Left-wing blogger started complaining to Reform to get me cancelled. Just because they didn't like some of my views. And instead of actually researching it, the Reform went and pussyfooted it and said, look, we've got enough controversy, we don't need yours as well. So, I mean, I had somebody, was it yesterday or this morning, slagging me off for being a bus driver. And it's like, yeah, I tried to move a bus the other day and didn't know how to drive it. I had to. I drive coaches, which, yeah, same license, but I haven't driven actual buses in a while. And I've always driven older things like 15, 20-year old. And I was asked like a couple of weeks ago to move this, 1-year old fancy service bus, and I couldn't do it. To call me a bus driver is somewhat of an insult. Um, Probably an insult to the bus drivers. I know a lot of bus drivers who couldn't drive coaches and vice versa. They're two different types of vehicles. So not saying one's better than the other. And I have my preference, someone else has theirs, which is fair enough. But it's a cancel culture that we have to protect ourselves. So I as much as a quick Google search, you'd be able to find my home on Google or whatever, my personal address, all sorts of stuff. What you won't find is anything work related outside of politics, because that is my work is one of my main sources of income. I don't want to risk that or lose it unnecessarily. And don't get me wrong, if my current employer turned around and said, "Oh no, we don't like all these complaints we're getting about you. You're no longer going to be working for us," fine. Tomorrow I'll be in another job. I'm skilled enough in a high demand career, shall we call it, and I'm paid above the UK average. So I am quite comfortable where I am at the moment. And I'm comfortable enough that if I lost my job tomorrow, I would walk into another one the day after. So, it doesn't matter too much. But that's the sort of protections you need to worry about right in the here and now. Prepare for the future, of course, but the here and now, we're facing that. And that's one of the other things that is causing so much anger in the society. There is, to coin a famous Scottish phrase, right? We are all Jock Tamson's bairns, right? We are all, one big sack of blood and everything else that goes along with it. That's all we are. We're human beings at the end of the day. And my warning to the people on the left or anyone who disagrees with me is, look, you're not going to have your Labour government forever. You're not going to have your choice of government forever. There's going to be a day when you've got an opposing government, and all the rights that you give to your government right now, including the rights to cancel people for speaking things that you disagree with, you're going to have a government you didn't want, you didn't agree with, and they're going to do exactly the same to you. So don't fall for it, right? The freedom of speech matters, because if you can't talk openly and freely and have these debates, then the same thing is going to befall you, and it's going to be bad for everyone.
You got it right. You nailed it, man. You nailed that, brother, man. I'm glad you said that, because no matter what,
Probably whiskey talking.
If one form of if your form of government is using fascism against people who don't think think the same way they do, it's only a matter of time before they start using that same fascism against you while you're supporting them, because it's the ultimate power grab. It's all about power. It's all about money. Do you think they give a fuck about your rights or your family or your livelihood or anything like that? No, they want to believe
cannon fodder. That's all it is. A politician's voters are just cannon fodder for the politician. That's all it is. And you're useful for a period of time, and when you're no longer useful to them, they will just use and abuse you just the same as anyone else.
like before we close out, let's talk about like the socialist countries real quick, right? Everybody talks about, oh my God, China's doing the greatest thing ever, and they're doing this. They're communist, and socialism is just like a step below communism. That's the next step. That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah,
That's your stepping
China's
stone
got this social credit score going on at the moment, and it's starting to creep into the UK as well. It's quite frightening.
Oh yeah, they're starting to do it here in the United States. But what I'm getting at is think about this. So people are like, well, China does it and they're communists and they got all these nice railways and stuff like that. Go to China and go anywhere outside of their major cities. Outside of their major cities.
And the
Poverty, no money. People are dying, they're sick. There's no money, there's no jobs, there's no housing, there's no nothing outside of the major cities, right? Same thing with Russia. Russia, some of the people from the right, well, Putin's doing this, and this. Outside of Moscow, Russia is a shithole. Honestly, Russia is a shithole outside of Moscow.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you look at countries look at what happened to Argentina. Mm-hmm. Javier Milei took over a shit show down there. He was the first libertarian president ever elected, and he took over a country that was responsible for taking 60% of IMF money every year. 60% of the IMF money went to Argentina. And at one point, Argentina was the number 3 economy in the entire world, had one of the largest export barges out of Buenos Aires. The shit leftards, the socialists destroyed that country. It's a fact. Look at Venezuela. The socialists destroyed that country. It's in ruins right now. That's why people are uprising at the moment. Nothing good comes from socialism. You want to go to the doctor under socialism? You have a broken arm? Unless you go to the emergency room, you're not seeing a doctor for 8 months.
Yeah, I know. In fact, I just had a friend. I won't go into detail because it is actually quite personal. But a friend was complaining to me today about a long waiting list for treatment. And it's having an impact on his and his wife's personal plans and circumstances, to the point that they're desperately looking for a private alternative. They've already waited the guts of a year for this treatment, and it's something. What is it? 70 something weeks. They were told they might have to wait. And it's shocking. That's what, near enough a year and a half, 18-month waiting list for essential treatment. And it was treatment that they were pressured into taking in the first place. And it now has to be undone because the socialist healthcare system got their decision wrong. And now they're not in a position to fix it. And it's shambolic. It's absolutely shambolic.
And that's where we're headed. Like if people want to go down this socialist road, this is where we're going. You will have nothing. You will own nothing. There will be shortages of food supply. There's not going to be any money. There's not going to be any jobs. The healthcare system is going to be worse than it already is. And here we are, people are begging for this stuff and they know not what they do, because they don't go out and talk to people in the real world. They're not doing what we're doing right now. I'm talking to somebody who's living in a place that is extremely oppressed by their government. We still do have some freedoms here in the United States. I would hardly call them freedoms too much, but we still do have certain choices that other countries don't. But we're on our way to being you guys. It's close. We're so close here in the United States right now.
Government is going to be the perpetrator of it. But that's the thing about, as soon as socialism starts biting into governments and, they start introducing socialist measures into society, it's the chip away and the chip away and the chip away until eventually there's nothing left to chip away and the whole thing collapses. And it's that suddenness you'll be going along, gradually going, right, something no right here, but they can't quite. There's so much going on. There's been so many decisions taken. They can't quite put their finger on it, and then suddenly, bam! It's you're hunting dogs and wild cats just to feed your family.
Right.
You're raiding the zoo because the farmers have still got guns.
Well, that's what they do. They take over the farms. Like right now here in the United States, one of the big spending packages that the United States put together was supposed to be for infrastructure and whatnot. But really what they're doing with some of that money is forcing farmers off of their farms so they can mine for cobalt and lithium and shit here.
Uh-huh.
That's the agenda of the socialists. Like they're going to shut down the food supply so they can have their electric bullshit car, lawnmower, whatever the fuck they want to do with this, battery operated bullshit, dude. This is happening here in America right now. A big chunk of that infrastructure bill went to using eminent domain towards farmers so they can start mining their own mountains and shit for these cobalts and lithiums and shit. The fuck out of here. This is a socialist regime. At some
stage, and at some stage you've got to wonder, is this deliberate or is it just utter incompetence? No one in their right sense of mind would take away a source of real value and replace it with perceived value. It just doesn't make sense. Why would you destroy a farm that produces food that we all need to live on and replace it with some sort of mine? There would have to be some sort of trade-off. Usually mines, you would find mines on mountains and hillsides where there is very limited farming capability. You don't find
they shut down the water supply to some of these farmers. They took away the water.
That's insane.
I can't even remember where I saw that. I totally saw that somewhere. I see so much shit online and I researched so much shit, but I saw that with my own eyes. They took away the water supply in Idaho.
That's a tactic normally reserved for standoffs and hostage negotiations. You gradually shut down things that people rely upon, forcing them to make a decision. So farmers are getting, they maybe they're not daft farmers, right? But they're getting tempted by huge sums of money, and the ones that don't take the temptation then get hit with a stick. Suddenly, things are happening that weren't happening before, and then it's sorry, the water's been shut off, and we might not, it's been a catastrophic collapse somewhere further up the pipeline, and we can't fix it for 3 months. You're going to have to buy in your own bottled water or something, right? And drive around your fields using bottled water to feed your pigs and your cattle. These sort of things. And then the next thing is, your roads are getting destroyed and not maintained or rebuilt. And then they're bringing in licensing and regulation and keeping your, the truck you've had for 20 years that has never let you down, ticks over starts first time every day, and, reasonably economical and gets you where you need to be, does what you need it to do, and then suddenly a new law is passed and you have to get rid of it because you're not legally allowed to drive it on the road anymore. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And this is why I'm going to keep saying it. Liberty is the solution. Liberty is the only way out of this at this point. Your government's not going to save you. I don't care if you're a leftist or a right or even a libertarian, like your government's not going to save you. There's no government that is coming to save you. They're coming to hurt you. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, you really need to get together with your local communities. And like Mike Decentralized says, that's our boy. That's how we know each other. You know what I mean? Like, you nullify everything everywhere. from the bottom up. You don't go from the top down. You go from the bottom up. You start from your local town, whatever your local village is in your state, and you get the right people in your local chairs, and you start telling the federal government to go pound sand. Fuck you. We're not doing shit no more. That's how we're going to start winning.
That's why they're attacking the farmers now, because they're the ultimate version of truly independent, self-reliant people. And if they can get rid of the farmers, the rest of us are screwed, because we rely on those farmers.
That's right. You are 100% correct. But Mr. McNamara, we should probably get off here. It's getting late for you, man. It's only the middle of the day for me here.
Dark.
I know it got dark all of a sudden behind you. You're outside and shit. So I need to let you get back to your family. I really appreciate your time, man. I'm glad I got to talk about this with you. There's no other person I would rather talk about it with other than somebody real who's living there. Other than some shit you see, even if it's on X, we get some pretty good news there, but like, it's still news. You don't know if it's completely real or not. You get to talking to somebody who's there in real time and a real person, then it starts to get much more real, man. I apologize. I'm sorry that you guys have to go through this shit right now. I really do. I wish you guys will figure out the best way possible to get yourselves out of this. I don't necessarily want it to be violence. But whatever, you know what I'm saying? But like, I want you guys to flourish. I want everybody to flourish in every country. You know what I mean? Even the Middle East, dude, those people deserve to be happy too, but instead the United States wants to go blow them all up just for the fact of doing it, because they have oil and shit like that in mountains with cobalt and lithium, like we were talking about. But like, we got to start building these local coalitions. You guys could do it there in Scotland. We can do it here in the United States. Start at your community level and just, start talking to your neighbors, radicalize your neighbors.
Proverbially.
What was that?
Yes. And proverbially, because I have to be careful using language now, proverbially strangle your politicians out of power.
I mean, I always said politicians make the best tree ornaments, but whatever. They do. They make the best tree ornaments, but that's neither here nor there. But Mr. McNamara, thank you so much for your time. How can we find you before we go? Give us your socials and how we can find you and help, get you.
Oh, well, just a quick Google search, Stephen McNamara, Kilmarnock. I'll pop up on most platforms. You can find me there with my small team helping me out, because, it's not always me. That's my legal defense.
Right on, man. Well, I appreciate your time. Well, be good, stay safe, but protect your family and your community as any way you see fit. I very much encourage that. I hope no hoodlums come to your neighborhood and get stupid, and stuff like that. But
I keep a nice selection of weapons at home. Don't worry about me.
Perfect. Love it, man. I love you, man. Till next time, peace, love, and liberty, y'all. Be good.